Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Karleen Savage is a TEDx speaker, hostage negotiator, and a seasoned parent who stands at the forefront of empowering parents to instill confidence in their teens. With more than 4 decades of hands-on experience of parenting, 7 unique children ranging in age from 28 to 41, Karleen has honed her skills in navigating the complexities of raising confident and resilient individuals, and has documented her approach in her new book, The Confident Teen Blueprint, a parent's 30-day challenge to empower your teen. As a trailblazer in the realm of parent-teen relationships, Karleen's insights have not been confined to theory, but are forged in the crucible of real-world challenges and triumphs as a parent herself, and from her experience navigating complex conflicts as a crisis negotiator. As the creator of the Savage theory of resolution, which is a 5-skill model that can be used to resolve any conflict, Karleen knows that a peaceful and amicable solution is possible. Karleen has been featured on MSNBC for her knowledge in hostage negotiation, and she holds a master's in conflict resolution and negotiations, and is a certified hostage and crisis negotiator.
Well, welcome, Karleen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Such a great honor.
I'm delighted, and I'm hoping you can start us off by letting us know a little bit about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Nice. Good question. I got into the work through personal experience. I just needed to. My husband suffered a brain injury about 30 years ago. And back then, brain injuries weren't understood. They weren't discussed. It wasn't something that parents talked about. We didn't know what it was, and we didn't know what all those symptoms were about. But fast forward, a decade and a half, and we were really struggling and just didn't know what to do. And so I decided, it took 4 years to get his diagnosis, and then, a decade and a half into it, then I decided I've got to figure this out. I cannot rely on anybody else because nobody knows how to deal with this stuff. So I went and got my master's in conflict resolution and negotiations and loved it, loved the change, loved what it did for me, loved the information, loved the alternatives. I went to work in the court systems, saw what could happen there using some of these skills. And then I loved the work so much, I went and I certified in hostage and then certified in crisis negotiations. And I started to see some common themes among those skills. And I trademarked it as the Savage theory of resolution. And from there, I've been teaching people about it and how to use those skills because we wait until the worst of times to use some of our best skills. And it's called a job. So mediation and hostage and crisis are people that are employed. And so that's when they use the skills. But I used it to change my own situation. And when I saw how the epic results I could get from using those skills, and I saw that they were similar, like everybody's was similar, slightly different. So that's what I did. I ended up trademarking the Savage theory of resolution and teaching it. So that's how I got here.
Well, and I was intrigued in reading the promo material about your work. Specifically, I think might be useful to a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, having to do with teens and negotiating with teens and using it in family situations, because without any hesitation, I can say it's one of the biggest areas that I have to work with people as a psychologist is the conflicts within and between families. So
So true.
perhaps you can give us some framework for thinking about how you start to approach making headway in a conflict and negotiating a resolution.
Yeah, you're right. Family dynamics is the toughest place. And the main reason I went to work doing this and teaching parents and teaching intimate partners how to do this is because everybody else, your hostage, your crisis, and your mediation, they all have a safety net. They all have somebody else that they can go to that can help them out when they get in a crunch. But we don't in families. And so we don't in intimate relationships. And that's what brought my passion forward is I thought, why are we waiting until the worst of times when we could do it now? And so the skills that are used in the Savage Survey resolution with teens are the same skills that you use with adults, with your peers in a workplace environment, anywhere and everywhere. It's the same thing. So yeah, and so one of the main things is curiosity, and it's just how you use curiosity. A lot of people, it's interesting. I had one mom call me up and she goes, "Okay, I'm having problems with my teen. I don't know what to do. Just tell me what the skill is. Tell me what the skills are." And I said, "Well, let me give you the first one. It's curiosity." "Oh, I've got that one. Don't worry about it. I've got it from here and I can do it. I've done it forever." And that's a lot of what we do. We say we know the skills, but when you're in a crisis and a high stakes conversation, it's a different kind of curiosity. And it's more of a curiosity of exceptional learning. It's not a curiosity of, tell me why you did that, or did you really think it was going to change anything? Those aren't the curiosities that you need in a crunch. You need the exceptional learner in a crunch. You need somebody who can look at the situation, not get emotionally attached to the situation, and just try and learn. How did we get here? What happened? What's happening in your life that's causing this kind of a reaction? Do I understand everything?
I'm hearing you talk about getting curious to be able to understand the other person's side of this coin.
Yeah, we do. You're spot on. Yes, that's exactly it. I just want to be careful that we don't take a light approach to it, your listeners, because a lot of times there is a big cliche that's out there going, just understand their point of view. And I'm not trying to understand their point of view. I'm trying to learn about their point of view. And that's a difference.
So learning how they got to that point of view.
Yeah. And how does it process? And, who were you talking to before you made that decision? Did you get that information from somebody else? Or how did you come up with that alternative in all the alternatives that might be there?
And so their reasons for choosing their particular alternative out of the myriad options that were available.
Correct.
So once you're curious, how do you know when it's time to switch from curiosity to another talent or skill?
Yeah, and it just depends on if there was enough, you should be able to see kind of changes that happen as you're learning about this. So as you're in a conversation with somebody, you're curious, you're learning about it. When you feel like you've gotten all the information, then you can move on, or you can delve into maybe a segment of what you found out. So maybe if it was, skipping school, maybe that was a thing. Maybe it was climbing out the window and going to a party. You can be curious and find out, what made you feel like you couldn't ask me? And you might find out it was, because I kind of hinted about it, or I know you don't like my friends, that kind of thing. And then once you get more information and you've exhausted that, then you can move on to other things. So another one is your attitude. Your attitude that mediators, hostage, and crisis negotiators come to the table with is, we're not solving the problem. I'm going to learn about the problem and you're going to solve it. All I'm going to do is facilitate the moment. And so you have to take that kind of hands-off approach. So if it is, you have to be willing to hear, hey, you don't like my friends, so I just kind of assumed that you'd say no. And because you've said no so many times, then it made me choose that way. The next one is master listening, and that's filling in gaps between their bullets. So If they said, you've said no a million times, and so I just assumed, and you can go into those bullet points. I just assumed, and you've said no a million times, and you fill in the gap. And that's the master listening of a mediator, hostage, and crisis negotiator. It's saying, do you ever feel like there's a time that you could tell me? That would be filling in a gap. That's going to do several things in a high stakes conversation, like it will diffuse tension. It's allowing somebody a space in the room to have their own opinions, to have their own views without the attitude of, I'm going to fix you and I'm going to get mad at you and I'm going to make you account. Your attitude is, I'm not going to fix this. I'm not going to do that right now. Now we'll get there. So it ebbs and flows, much like a hostage crisis or a mediation does.
So one example of filling in the gaps in those bullet points would be to ask a question that leads them, but doesn't directly contradict the point they made. So when they say, you always say no to me, instead of saying that's not true, you ask them if they can remember a time when you didn't, when you said yes.
Or have I ever made you feel okay to tell me something?
Right.
And then finding out, what did that look like for you when that happened? So you're framing what it needs to look like, maybe.
So you're hearing them say, there has been this habit, this pattern between us where I say no to you. I hear you saying that. Was there ever a time when you felt like it was okay to tell me something? And what was I doing at that time that helped you feel that way? So now you're getting them to coach you into what would help them feel more comfortable.
Yes.
So you're curious, and then your attitude has to be, I'm not in charge here. I'm not going to fix this for you. I'm going to do what I can to facilitate you coming up with your own solution.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this M for master listening.
Yes. And the master listening it's filling in information, because if a coworker, if your boss, and they're just disappointed, they already have where they're going in their head laid out. So when you become good at conflict resolution, what happens is that you kind of take your hands off the wheel using a good attitude, or a useful attitude for the situation. And then what you're going to do is, people usually talk in bullet points. You always say no, you don't like my friends. And they just start talking in bullet points. Or it's like, every time I come in late, you're always on my case. And they talk in bullet points. So what your master listening is doing is talking between those bullet points and getting more clarity. So it's taking that curiosity and bringing it down to the master listening, because we want to get out of the tension, and that will help diffuse situations.
So if I'm asking somebody to help me clarify so that I can understand how they got to their position more thoroughly, and what my role might have been in presenting a pressure for them to choose the way they've chosen, then it gives me information about what I might shift in my demeanor or my behavior that'll make it easier for them to listen to me.
Yes. Easier for us to listen to each other. Yeah. Because as you ebb and flow through that, they're going to change how they respond to you. If you're truly coming in with curiosity, exceptional learning, you're really wanting to learn their process, what matters to them, those kinds of things, and you're taking your hands off the wheel, so you're not in charge anymore to some degree, and then you're master listening, that is going to create a relationship rather than it's a you against me.
Yeah. It's that kind of the softening that happens when I can actually give somebody the gift of feeling heard and understood.
Yes.
And it creates this connection between us that allows, a more in-depth communication, because the intimacy is starting to build.
Correct. Yeah.
So then what? So we've got the master listening in place. We've been curious. We're making sure we're not trying to grab the reins and control this whole thing. We're going to facilitate a resolution that hopefully they come to.
Yeah.
And then what?
Then you do a connection. A connection is a statement. It's a 50,000-foot view of what you've been listening to. So it could be, it sounds like, man, I've made this really hard for you to be able to tell me things. Sounds like we need to come up with another way because this is kind of breaking us. And what you're looking for is a response from them of, yeah, that's true, or you're right, or you're looking for those kinds of responses. It's a connection. And it's that old, it's a little bit of a refining of that empathy. It's a refining of empathy because a lot of empathy in today's world is actually, in my view, a bit false because we're going, I understand, I hear you. I'm going to let you, I want you to be heard while I'm snapping your head off for being late. I want to give you space. I want to give you an opportunity to tell me. You can go ahead and tell me. But that kind of a tone is not an empathetic tone, but they will claim it is because you can come forward. Connection is looking at it again from the 50,000 foot view and kind of just getting a bird's eye view. If you were to look at the globe at Earth from, say, 20,000 feet, what would you see? 10,000 feet, what would you see? 50,000 feet, what would you see? And that's what you're doing in a connection statement. You're just taking this whole great big picture of everything that they've been disclosing. And
But it has both you and them in the picture.
It has us both in the picture. It sounds like, or not. I mean, it could be just simply for the other person. Sounds like you had no other resource. That's what I've used on crisis calls. Sounds like you had no other resource to go to except to call us. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you called. And then you just start picking it back up. And so that's the fourth one. And then the fifth one, the skills is reframing. And that's where you take all the information. You take all the information and you say something like, well, you can't sneak out of the house. Clearly, that's going to create a problem for everybody, for you, because you're trying to, be risk averse and avoid us and do all those things. Clearly, you're struggling with telling me truth. Clearly, I've created a situation for you to feel like you can't confide in me. How can we do this better? How can we do this differently? What needs to happen?
So you're in the problem solving mode in this last phase, right? This last skill you're talking about. So curiosity, attitude, master listening,
Connection,
and then
reframe. So you're reframing the picture now. And now you're saying, okay, so here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm seeing. That's in regular societal speak. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. But what you're doing is you're actually reframing the whole picture that you've just gotten. And you're asking in different kinds of ways, what can we do? So you might say, then you let me go to the party. Well, okay, you're right. I do have reservations about your friends. What's a better way to help us remove that reservation? Now, if I'm going to be honest, I think, we've had some issues with you not getting your homework done or skipping a day of school, or, you haven't been where you should be. Those have caused us concern, which is the reason why we doubt your friendships. So what's another way we can make this happen?
So now you're into the brainstorming for, problem solving.
Yeah, it's great.
So in what I understand, you have some kind of an online program to teach this to people to help. Because, a conversation like this that you and I are having isn't going to turn me into a master negotiator or a conflict resolution specialist.
Right. So yeah, I do online courses now. I used to be an adjunct professor at the university. But I brought it all online. So just my website, and you fill it out. You fill out the form. I make it really simple. Go to the website, fill out the form. Or you could book a call with me if you really if there's urgent issues happening. But you just fill out the form and I invite you to our next round. And we generally have our rounds every 3 months. And that's when we do this whole teach you how to use curiosity. It's a whole program that we walk you through.
What's the length of the program?
Some of our deeper dive are 8 weeks. And that really gives you a really an in-depth look and an in-depth, it's an immersion program. So you actually have to go away and practice. You actually have to go away, use the skill, come back and talk about how the skill was working. We troubleshoot all those situations. But yeah, it works
So this is
because,
in an online class format?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
typically how many would be in a class size?
we have about 20 in our class at a time. And we cap those things because we need to be able to give you the attention that you need. Now, at the university I used to teach, and there were maybe 30, 35 people in a room. But that's face to face. Online is very different. It has to give you the chance to get integrated into the group, be able to participate, give you some breakout sessions, answer those Q&As that you're obviously going to have, those kinds of things. So it's very different from a face to face.
But my next question is basically, I'm having difficulty formulating it. Who typically takes these? Are you getting professional negotiators or people from police forces? Are you getting family members who have teens, parents who have teens, and or do you get employers that are trying to learn how to resolve conflicts in their business?
Great question. Yeah, it's usually the civilian life. For hostage negotiation, you have an international hostage negotiation training team. Court systems has theirs. You can go to the university for those. So mine is for the mainstream. Mine is for parents, executive women, uh, people in relationships. Those are the people that come, and that's how I market. I market to people that need the skill, have no safety net.
So
So
is it typically an 8-week course?
yes, yes.
And what's the cost?
It varies depending upon the special. So if you go there and you register, then if we get into, so every year we do we do a launch, and say in August, where we do our launches to make sure that giving people as much opportunity as they can. We do have a refresh course. So it just depends on what they want to do and what that starts out with, but it's really reasonable, or all along it's been really reasonable. So depending upon the length, I mean, you can watch a webinar for, $29, as low as $29. So you can watch a webinar for that. It's still not going to get you what you need. If people are listening to your podcast and they're wanting to deep dive, then you would want to go in and register for that, and then take advantage of any of the specials that are going to be coming through on that. That's what I would recommend. So I have a question for you, Timothy.
All right.
You've heard it all. You've heard this. You've got a lot of experience. So how does this ebb and flow with what you have or what you know of the work you do?
Well, it sounds very similar to the best of the stuff that I've heard over the years. And I have four different listening or communicating skills um, outlines or templates that I refer people to over the years. One of them is Harville Hendrix and his Imago dialogue, which has a very similar kind of you just be the listener and let the other person communicate to you. And you feed it back to them over and over again until they finally say, okay, you got it. You understand. Another one that has a very similar format is from Robert Bolton's book, People Skills, where he talks about reflective listening. And you're basically doing the same thing. You're listening, the other person's talking. When they take a breath, rather than you summarizing your point of view, you repeat their point of view and ask them if you got it correct. So it's this constant feeding back and repetition until you've actually given the other person the gift of feeling heard and understood. And what most of us don't understand is that you don't have to agree with the other person in order to help them have that feeling that they've been heard and understood. You don't have to fight and contest everything they say, because if you don't, so some of us have the feeling that if I'm not telling you you're wrong, that means I'm agreeing with you. And there's that middle ground where you can do what you're calling the master listening, where you can develop the relationship and refine the communication to the point where at least we know we're both looking at the same thing with the same kind of meanings to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Michael Rice has something he calls responsibility communication, which is very much the same thing. You just talk about things from that dispassionate way that isn't all loaded with judgment and distortion and emotion, and you lay it out with the understanding, I know I'm the one that's creating my emotions, and I just wanted to share with you that when this thing happened and that thing happened, and we can both agree that this happened and that happened, this is what it felt like to me. And then the fourth one is what Dr. Marshall Rosenberg has called nonviolent communication. And in the past couple of years, I've been referring people to Micah Salaberios and his very short book that's a beautiful summary of Dr. Rosenberg's work for the nonviolent communication. It's called The Art of Nonviolent Communication. It's only about an hour audio file, but it's almost exactly what you're talking about here. It's this clarity that I'm not trying to grab a hold of this and be in control. I'm trying to understand at a deeper level. And
Yeah.
it's from that deeper understanding and that blending of the understanding with the respect for the other person and their situation that opens the door for us finding solutions. It doesn't
Yeah.
immediately present all the solutions, but it creates the circumstances in which the solutions can be found.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And yes, it's people have been out there trying to contribute and finding ways. And I think that the unique spin that I'm coming out with is it's from these fields. So these fields are hands-on. These are like proven fields, which I know that the people that you're talking about have their background and their intelligence and their stuff that they're bringing to the table. It's also coming from, there's not a whole lot. I have 7 kids. They're all grown. I have seen a lot of people out there are talking about how to rear kids, but they're in the throes of rearing kids. All my kids are adults. And so to be able to come through and actually see, impact, I used these skills. This is how I used it. This is what's working. This is how you can coin it. This is how the things you don't say in a tense situation, the things you can say, but I can take that times 7 and go, and it works, guys, in a different way. So one of the things that helps in my course is that um, I have real life experience, not just my 7 kids, my husband with a brain injury, not just that. I've taken in probably a dozen other people, all teens that have lived with us, that have come to us in problem situations, and we've been able to show them a way out of the brown paper bag, if you will, and be able to give them those skills in order to navigate relationships moving forward. And so, yeah, um, it's amazing that there are people out there that are endorsing and supporting that kind of stuff. So yeah, I
Well,
think
and it's wonderful that you've got a program where you're integrating, some of the stuff we've talked about and other stuff that takes it beyond just a listening skill.
yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, because a lot of people today, they talk about depression and anxiety and all of the things. I remember when Ritalin started being prescribed, for the ADHD. We didn't call it that back in the day, but it was. And I remember the history of why. Those are the things that today's parents or today's people don't necessarily have an institutional memory of. I'm not just a mom of 7 grown kids. I'm a grandmother, and we've been doing it with a 4-year-old grandson. We've had him for 2 years. We're doing it with him. It's a rinse and repeat. Does it work? So you can't really, like in my world, you can't really come to me and say, this doesn't work, because I have too many situations and experiences that prove that it does work. Not just that, your mediators, your hostage, and your crisis negotiators, it works for them, or else you would be seeing all this stuff in the news a lot more.
Right.
So
Wonderful.
it's just great that you have that to offer your listeners, and I'm just like endorsing.
So let me ask you to get centered here and think about if we're closing in on the end of our time, what's an aspect of either your work or situations that you would offer as an example, or something we haven't even mentioned yet about your work that you want to put in here?
An aspect of my work. What a great question. Um, do I want to put in here? Maybe I'm not understanding the question, Timothy.
So either something that we've already talked about that you want to recap as here's the highlight, or something that's an aspect of what you teach people in negotiating skills and conflict resolution that maybe we haven't mentioned yet.
So I can just share an experience with you. Would that be okay?
Sure.
So when my son was early 20, or a late teen, he had asked his sister who worked for the airlines for some free tickets, and they get guest passes. My daughter didn't want to give it to him because he tends to be a little bit of a hothead. Like if he gets mad, he'll go storming off kind of thing and just, shake his arms and that kind of thing. So to think that I have these exceptionally well-behaved children is not true. But so he has a tendency to, get really resistant. And so she had told me, I don't want to give them to him because they could lose their job working in the airlines. If they give out guest passes, you misbehave at the airport, you get angry at a gate agent, something like that, they can report that employee and that employee could lose their job. So very justly so, she said, I don't feel comfortable doing it. That's what she tells me, but she lets this cycle go on. She never talks to the brother. So a month later, I had a different son at the house with my husband, and he goes, I don't know what the big deal is. Why couldn't she give him the tickets? And my husband chimes in, yeah, I think that was nonsense. It's stupid. And with that, I just hang my head. It was just like, oh my gosh, my husband getting in on this is probably not a good idea. But my son, who didn't get the tickets, was there as well. And so there we are. It's me, my husband, his brother, and the one who had asked for the tickets. The daughter is in another state. And so they start talking. The husband and the brother start talking. This son of mine starts getting very tense and antsy, and he's starting to pace back and forth in the kitchen as they're talking. And it's feeding that tension. So then all of a sudden he starts walking out of the kitchen and coming back. Pretty soon he's walking out of the kitchen, into the hallway, into the living room, into the dining room, back into the kitchen, and he's making this big round circle, and it's going faster and faster. So as a trained specialist, I'm looking at it going, oh no, here we are. He's going to walk out. He's going to throw a fit, and I don't want him behind the wheel of a car. But what we do as people, as humans, is we go, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to help you. I don't want to. And we do that. So I was struggling in my own brain, in my own human brain of, you know what? You need to knock off your little tantrums and talk. And he could get behind the wheel. What do I do? So as I sat there debating in my own head while he's pacing and while brother and husband are talking, like I'm watching this escalate. And this is a lot of what we go through if we're not paying attention. This is everyday stuff for some families. And you do sit there and make decisions about, oh, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to help. In my head, it was, I don't want to help. Karleen, you already know how to do this. I don't want to help. So for other parents, it might be, I just don't want to talk to you. I'm done. I'm out. And that could be how it works. So I watch this, and he's pacing and he's pacing and he's pacing. And everybody's going back and forth. I hang my head. I come back up, revived, and I go, son, what would be the best outcome in this situation? And instantly he was like, what? And his whole tone changed. His face changed. His shoulders dropped. You see the difference. You asked earlier about how do you know? And so as I was doing that, I saw the body change. And so I looked at him and I said, if you could write the perfect outcome to this situation only, what would it be? That's the reframe, because I'd already been listening to everybody talk. What would it be? And he looked at me, and he's leaning forward because he's still in tense mode. He's leaning forward on the counter, and he goes, for her to have told me no. And I went, oh my gosh, what an enlightenment. Imagine what would happen if I kept the closed ideals, my own agenda, stop it, knock it off, learn to use your words. Imagine now I've switched it, and I said, what would it look like for you? Perfect outcome. For her to have told me. And I said, so this isn't about the airline tickets at all. This is more about respect. And he went back to that connection, and he said, yeah, it's about respect. And I said, oh my goodness, now going back, we have so misunderstood the situation for you. That needs to be addressed. So do you feel like you can address it? Reframe. Do you feel like you can address it with your sister, or do you need some support? No, I feel like I can address it. Great. So I didn't fix it. The curiosity was already happening as everybody was talking and I was listening. The master listening was already happening as they were sorting through how terrible the sister was. And my reframe came in because part of what was happening is he was not hearing anymore. We could not talk anymore. He was rounding.
Great example. Yeah, great example. Well, I greatly appreciate your taking the time to share this with us. Give us your website. We'll have it posted in the links, etc. But what's the website for people to connect with you?
KarleenSavage.com. And just fill out the
KarLeen Savage.com.
Yeah. Yes. And just fill out the form to contact to register with me, and I'll make sure you get everything, including all the freebies.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking time to share with us. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Karleen Savage is a TEDx speaker, hostage negotiator, and a seasoned parent who stands at the forefront of empowering parents to instill confidence in their teens. With more than 4 decades of hands-on experience of parenting, 7 unique children ranging in age from 28 to 41, Karleen has honed her skills in navigating the complexities of raising confident and resilient individuals, and has documented her approach in her new book, The Confident Teen Blueprint, A Parent's 30-Day Challenge to Empower Your Teen. As a trailblazer in the realm of parent-teen relationships, Karleen's insights have not been confined to theory, but are forged in the crucible of real-world challenges and triumphs as a parent herself, and from her experience navigating complex conflicts as a crisis negotiator. As the creator of the Savage Theory of Resolution, which is a 5-skill model that can be used to resolve any conflict, Karleen knows that a peaceful and amicable solution is possible. Karleen has been featured on MSNBC for her knowledge in hostage negotiation, and she holds a master's in conflict resolution and negotiations, and is a certified hostage and crisis negotiator.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.